My name is Casey Williams, 32 years old, and a proud Army veteran who came home to find strangers living in my grandparents' house, the one they left specifically to me. After 6 months in Africa on a humanitarian mission, I discovered my sister Amanda had somehow sold my home for $600,000. When I confronted her, she slapped me across the face, shoved me out the door, and sneered, "Get out, loser." Little did she know I had already started gathering evidence that would change everything. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had a family member betray your trust. Growing up, my grandparents' house in Boston was more than just a building. It was the heart of our family. My grandfather, a decorated Vietnam veteran, purchased the colonial-style home in the Dorchester neighborhood back in 1972. Built in the 1920s, the house had character you simply can't find in modern constructions. Hardwood floors that creaked in specific spots we learned to avoid during midnight snack raids, a grand staircase with an ornate banister I used to slide down as a kid, and a massive oak tree in the backyard with a tire swing that hosted 3 generations of Williams children. Every Sunday, the family gathered for dinner in the spacious dining room. My grandmother would spend the entire day preparing meals that brought everyone together, cousins, aunts, uncles, all squeezed around that antique mahogany table, passed down through 4 generations. The walls held countless photographs, documenting our family history, black and white images of ancestors. I never met my father's awkward high school graduation photo, and dozens of snapshots capturing birthdays, holidays, and ordinary moments that became extraordinary memories. My grandfather and I shared a special bond. As a fellow military man, he understood parts of me that civilians never could. After I completed my 4 years of service, he would invite me to his study, where the smell of leather-bound books and pipe tobacco created a sanctuary. We'd sit for hours as he shared war stories, life lessons, and family history. This house, he'd tell me, tapping his walking stick against the floor for emphasis, is more than wood and nails. It's our family's anchor. When my grandparents passed away 3 years ago, my grandmother from cancer, and my grandfather following just 2 months later, the doctors called it natural causes, but we all knew it was a broken heart. Their will was specific. The house, valued at approximately $850,000, was left solely to me. Their attorney explained, "They chose me because I had expressed the most interest in preserving the family history and maintaining the property for future generations." My sister Amanda, 7 years my senior at 39, initially congratulated me. "They made the right choice," she said at the reading of the will, hugging me tightly. "You'll take care of it properly." Amanda received a cash inheritance of $100,000, which seemed fair to everyone involved. She had always been more career-focused anyway, working as a marketing executive at a pharmaceutical company. She lived in a luxury apartment downtown with her husband Michael, a quiet accountant who always seemed slightly uncomfortable at family gatherings. Our relationship had been positive throughout childhood despite the age gap. Amanda protected me from bullies, taught me to ride a bike, and snuck me extra desserts when our parents weren't looking. As adults, we maintained our bond through weekly dinners and holiday celebrations, but things began to change about a year after the inheritance. Amanda started dropping hints about her financial situation. First, it was casual comments about the cost of living in Boston, then more direct statements about Michael's company downsizing. Soon she was asking to borrow increasingly large sums of money. I helped when I could, but after lending her $20,000 that was never repaid, I had to establish boundaries. That's when I noticed the shift in her attitude toward the house. Her comments became tinged with resentment. "It's such a waste for one person," or "You could sell it, and we could both benefit." I maintained my position firmly but kindly. This was my grandparents' wish, and I intended to honor it by keeping the house in the family. What I didn't tell Amanda was that I'd discovered evidence of her gambling problem. Credit card statements Michael had accidentally left behind during a visit showed massive charges at Mohegan Sun and various online betting sites. 6 months ago, I was offered an opportunity I couldn't refuse, joining a humanitarian mission to build schools in rural communities across Tanzania. As a construction specialist during my military service, my skills were valuable to the project, and after years of war zones, I welcomed the chance to build rather than destroy. The mission would last 6 months, with minimal communication options due to the remote locations. Before leaving, I made thorough preparations for the house. I installed a comprehensive security system with camera monitoring I could occasionally access via satellite internet. All the bills were set to autopay from my account. I arranged for a lawn service to maintain the exterior. Most importantly, I secured all valuable documents, including the deed, in a safe deposit box at my bank. I even left a detailed letter with my attorney outlining that under no circumstances was the house to be sold during my absence. Throughout my time in Africa, Amanda sent occasional text messages when I had service. Just checked on the house, everything's fine, or stopped by to water the plants you forgot about. I appreciated what I thought was her thoughtfulness, never suspecting what was actually happening back home. Those 6 months in Tanzania transformed me. Working alongside local communities, watching children's faces light up as their new schools took shape, it filled a void I hadn't realized existed since leaving the military. By the time I boarded my flight back to Boston, I was excited not just to return to my grandparents' house, but to bring this new sense of purpose home with me. I envisioned hosting community events in the backyard, maybe starting a program for veterans. The house would become more than just a family legacy. It would be a force for good in the neighborhood. The 16-hour flight couldn't dampen my spirits. I even splurged on a taxi from Logan Airport rather than waiting for public transportation. Back to Dorchester, I told the driver with a smile. I've been gone too long. The taxi pulled up to the familiar address, but something felt immediately wrong. The old oak tree, the one my grandfather had strung with fairy lights every Christmas for 50 years, had been cut down to a stump. The front door, once a distinguished navy blue, was now painted a garish red. Flower beds that once showcased my grandmother's prized perennials had been ripped out and replaced with generic landscaping rocks. "You sure this is the right place?" the taxi driver asked, noticing my bewildered expression. I think so," I stammered, double-checking the address. The numbers matched, but this couldn't be right. As I approached the front door, luggage in tow, a stranger answered my knock. A woman in her mid-30s with a toddler balanced on her hip stared at me with confusion. "Can I help you?" she asked instinctively, shifting her body to protect her child from the unexpected visitor. "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake." I began feeling increasingly disoriented. "This is my house. I've been away for 6 months, but this is definitely my address." Her expression changed from confusion to concern. "We bought this house 4 months ago. We have all the paperwork. My husband is in the kitchen, Tom," she called over her shoulder. A tall man appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "What's going on, Sarah?" "This man says this is his house," she explained, her voice tight with anxiety. "There must be some misunderstanding," Tom said calmly. "We purchased this property legally in February. We have the deed and all the documentation." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear over the rush of blood in my ears. "Would you mind showing me the paperwork? I'm Casey Williams. This house belonged to my grandparents and was left to me when they passed away. I've been out of the country on a humanitarian mission." Tom hesitated, then nodded. "Come in, I'll get the files." I stepped into what should have been my home but was now unrecognizable. The vintage wallpaper in the entryway had been stripped and replaced with modern gray paint. The antique coat rack where my grandfather hung his hat every evening was gone. Even the smell was different, unfamiliar cleaning products, instead of the lingering scent of my grandmother's cinnamon cookies. Tom returned with a folder and spread the documents across what used to be my grandmother's cherished mahogany dining table, now replaced by a glass-topped modern piece. The deed clearly showed the property transfer from Casey Williams to Thomas and Sarah Parker for the amount of $600,000 dated February 15th. "That's my name," I said, pointing to the signature, "but that's not my signature. I never sold this house. I've been in Africa since January." Tom and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. "We worked with a real estate agent named Lisa Reynolds," Sarah explained. "She said the owner needed to sell quickly because he was permanently relocating overseas. We never met you personally. Everything went through your sister, who had power of attorney, Amanda Williams." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Amanda had sold my house. Using what power of attorney? The only one I'd ever signed was years ago when I was deployed, and needed her to handle a banking issue which had been resolved within weeks of my return. "This is wrong," I managed to say. "This house was never for sale. My sister had no authority to sell it." "We have a family now," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she clutched her toddler closer. "We sold our previous home. We've invested $50,000 in renovations already." Tom placed his arm around his wife protectively. "Look, this is clearly a serious situation, but we purchased this house in good faith. We have a legal deed." I stared at the paperwork, at the forged signature that bore only a passing resemblance to my own. $600,000 for a property worth at least $850,000 on the market. Amanda had not only stolen my house, but practically given it away. "I'm sorry," I said, gathering myself. "This isn't your fault, but I need to speak with my sister immediately." Outside on the sidewalk, I called Amanda's cell phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of shock and rage. "Well, look who's back from saving the world," she answered on the third ring, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Amanda, I'm standing outside our grandparents' house right now. There's a family living here who says they bought it from you 4 months ago. Tell me this is some kind of sick joke." A pause, then a laugh that chilled me to the bone. "Oh, Casey, always so dramatic. The house sold for $600,000. You should be thanking me for handling everything while you were off playing hero." "Thanking you? You had no right. That house was mine, legally, morally, every possible way. How could you do this?" "You were gone," she replied coldly. "You abandoned your responsibilities. Someone had to make decisions." "I'm coming over," I said, ending the call before she could respond. 45 minutes and 1 subway ride later, I was pounding on the door of Amanda's luxury apartment in Back Bay. My sister opened the door wearing designer clothes that looked brand new, a tennis bracelet I'd never seen before glittering on her wrist. "Lower your voice," she hissed, pulling me inside. "The neighbors will hear." Her apartment had undergone a significant upgrade since my departure. New furniture, expensive artwork, and what looked like a completely remodeled kitchen were immediately apparent. "What have you done?" I demanded, waving the copy of the deed Tom had kindly provided. "You sold my house. The house our grandparents specifically left to me without my knowledge or consent." Amanda rolled her eyes dramatically. "Don't be so attached to material things, Casey. It was just sitting there empty while you were gallivanting around Africa." "It wasn't empty. It was being maintained exactly as I planned. I had security cameras, lawn service, everything was taken care of." "Well, now you have $600,000 instead of a money pit. You should be grateful." I stared at her in disbelief. "Where's the money then? Because it certainly hasn't appeared in my bank account." Something flashed across her face, guilt maybe, or calculation, before she composed herself. There were expenses, legal fees, real estate commissions, and I deserved compensation for handling everything. "Handling everything?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You mean forging my signature, using an expired power of attorney document, selling a house for $250,000 below market value?" Amanda's husband, Michael, appeared from the bedroom, his expression uncomfortable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The market fluctuates," Amanda said dismissively, "and that old house needed at least $100,000 in repairs." "How dare you?" I said, stepping closer to her. "That was our grandparents' home. They trusted me to preserve it, and you knew that. How could you betray not just me, but their memory too?" The slap came without warning, Amanda's manicured hand striking my cheek with surprising force. "Don't you dare question my relationship with our grandparents. They always loved me more, they just felt sorry for you after the army messed you up." I stood frozen, my cheek stinging as Amanda continued her tirade. "You think you're so special because you went to war, because you build schools for poor kids in Africa. Meanwhile, I've been here dealing with real-life bills, responsibilities, social expectations. That inheritance should have been split evenly." Amanda, Michael interjected quietly. "Maybe we should." "Shut up, Michael," she snapped before turning back to me. "You needed to learn that the world doesn't revolve around Casey Williams. I needed that money. I deserved that money. For what I asked. Gambling debts, new clothes, renovating your already expensive apartment. Her eyes widened slightly. I had hit a nerve. "Get out," she said, shoving me toward the door with both hands. "Get out of my home, you self-righteous loser. You can't prove anything anyway." As she pushed me into the hallway, I caught one last glimpse of Michael's face. He looked ashamed, avoiding my gaze as Amanda slammed the door. Standing alone in the corridor, the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. I was homeless. The home that had been in our family for generations, the one place I felt connected to my grandparents, had been sold out from under me. And my own sister, the person who had taught me to tie my shoes and stood up for me against bullies, had been the one to take it all away. I checked into a nearby hotel using the emergency credit card I kept for situations I never imagined would include being robbed by my own sister. Sitting on the edge of the generic hotel bed, I allowed myself 10 minutes to feel the devastating loss. Then, military training kicking in, I began to plan my counterattack. The following morning, after a night of fitful sleep, I called the one person I knew I could trust, Jake Sullivan, my closest friend since 3rd grade, and now a real estate attorney at a prestigious Boston law firm. We'd stayed in touch during my time in Africa, and I had received occasional emails with updates about his engagement to his longtime girlfriend and their new puppy. "Casey, you're back." Jake's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "When did you get in?" "Yesterday," I replied, "and I've walked into a nightmare. Do you have time to meet today? It's urgent." Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation because Jake immediately cleared his schedule. "Come to my office at 11. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Jake's corner office on the 20th floor of a downtown high-rise offered a spectacular view of Boston Harbor, but I barely noticed as I laid out the shocking details of what had transpired during my absence. As I spoke, Jake's expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to cold anger. "Let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Amanda somehow sold your house using a power of attorney document from 5 years ago when you were deployed?" I nodded. "It was for a specific banking issue. I revoked it when I came home." Jake was already typing on his computer. "Did you file the revocation with the Registry of Deeds?" My heart sank. "I'm not sure. The bank said they'd handle everything." "That might be our first problem," Jake said. "But even if the POA was technically still valid, it would need to specifically grant the power to sell real estate. Most standard POAs don't include that." He swiveled his monitor to show me a database search. The real estate agent on this transaction was Lisa Reynolds. I'm looking her up now. After a few clicks, Jake let out a low whistle. "Well, that's interesting. Lisa Reynolds and Amanda Williams both attended Northeastern University from 2004 to 2008. They were sorority sisters. So Amanda's college roommate helped her sell my house," I said, the pieces starting to connect. "We need to gather more evidence," Jake said, his professional demeanor taking over. "Let's start with the county clerk's office to get official copies of all documents related to the property. Then we should speak with the notary who validated the signatures. I'm also going to look into where the money went." The next 3 days became a whirlwind of investigation. At the county clerk's office, we obtained copies of the deed transfer, the apparently still valid power of attorney, and the closing documents, all bearing what appeared to be my signature, but with subtle differences. Only someone, familiar with my handwriting, would notice. The notary, a young woman named Brittany working at a shipping store, became nervous when Jake identified himself as an attorney. "I remember this transaction," she said, twisting her hands together. "A woman came in with the documents already signed. She said her brother, that would be you, I guess, had signed everything but forgot to get it notarized before leaving the country." "Did you ask for identification?" Jake asked. Brittany nodded. "She showed me her ID, Amanda Williams, and said she had power of attorney. She had the document with her. I didn't actually see Casey Williams in person." Jake exchanged a glance with me. "Did you know that's illegal? A notary must witness the signature being made." The color drained from Brittany's face. I didn't know. She seemed so professional, and she said it was urgent." With Brittany's written statement in hand, we moved on to tracking the money trail. Jake used his firm's resources to obtain records of the transaction. $600,000 had indeed changed hands. $550,000 to Amanda's personal account, not a joint account with Michael first noted, and $50,000 to Lisa Reynolds. $50,000 is a very generous commission on a $600,000 sale, Jake observed. Standard rate would be closer to $18,000. Sounds like a kickback for helping with fraud, I said bitterly. Jake's expression was grim as he showed me the next finding bank records, revealing that Amanda had already spent over $200,000 in just 4 months. Withdrawals at Mohegan Sun Casino. A new Mercedes SUV purchased outright. A $30,000 trip to the Maldives. Multiple large payments to credit card companies. She's burning through it fast, Jake said. If we don't act quickly, there might not be anything left to recover. While Jake worked his legal magic, I took a more direct approach with some investigative work of my own. I drove past the real estate office where Lisa Reynolds worked, then followed her after closing time. At a coffee shop, I accidentally bumped into her. "I'm so sorry," I apologized, then paused as if recognizing her. "Wait, aren't you Lisa Reynolds? The real estate agent?" Her smile was professional, but cautious. "Yes, that's me. Have we met?" "No, but my sister Amanda Williams speaks very highly of you. You helped her sell our family home recently." Lisa's expression shifted subtly, a flash of discomfort quickly masked with a broader smile. "Oh yes, Amanda, lovely woman. That was a smooth transaction. The buyers are very happy." "I bet they are," I said, maintaining a friendly tone. $850,000 house for $600,000. Quite a deal. "Market conditions," she replied automatically, then frowned. "Wait, I thought you were overseas. Amanda handled everything because you were unreachable in Africa." "Interesting," I said, dropping all pretense. "Because I never authorized the sale. That's my point, Lisa. I'm Casey Williams, and you helped my sister steal my house." The color drained from her face. "I didn't," Amanda said. "She had paperwork." She grabbed her purse and practically ran from the coffee shop. Back at the hotel that evening, Jake called with more damning evidence. "I've been reviewing Amanda's bank statements for the past year," he said. "Casey, she's got a serious gambling problem. Before selling your house, she was already in debt for over $100,000 to various casinos and credit card companies. She and Michael remortgaged their apartment 6 months ago." "That explains the desperation," I said, "but not why Michael went along with it." "I'm not sure he knew the full extent," Jake replied. "The documents I've seen only have Amanda's signature, not his." For 3 sleepless nights I reviewed the growing stack of evidence, my anger at Amanda's betrayal competing with grief over the family home I might never recover. I called my old bank and confirmed my suspicion. Amanda had somehow gained access to my mail while I was away, intercepting bank statements and tax documents. She had effectively erased my paper trail while creating a new one. I also made a point to visit Tom and Sarah, the innocent buyers now caught in this mess. They welcomed me cautiously into what had been my home, and we sat in what used to be my grandfather's study now, a nursery for their infant son. "We want you to know we bought this house in good faith," Tom said. "We had no idea there was anything suspicious." "I believe you," I assured them. "This isn't your fault. My sister and her accomplice took advantage of everyone involved." Sarah bounced her baby gently. "What happens now? This is our home. We've put everything we have into it." I had no easy answer for them. "I don't know yet, but I promise to keep you informed every step of the way. You're victims in this too." As I left, I noticed the stump of the old oak tree in the backyard. "Why was the tree cut down?" I asked. "It had some disease," Tom explained. "The arborist said it was a safety hazard." Another lie from Amanda, I realized. That tree had been perfectly healthy, but its removal made the property less recognizable to me and erased another piece of my family's history. On day 5 of my investigation, Jake arranged a meeting with Richard Martinez, a criminal attorney specializing in fraud cases. We gathered in Jake's office, the table covered with documents, photographs, and financial records. "First, I want to be clear about your goals here," Richard said, his experienced eyes evaluating me carefully. "Do you want your house back? Do you want compensation? Do you want your sister in jail? These are separate legal paths with different strategies. I considered his question seriously. Ideally, I want the house back. These buyers are innocent, so they deserve their money returned. I want the stolen funds recovered. And I want Amanda to face consequences, real ones, not just a slap on the wrist. Richard nodded, making notes. Let's break down your legal options. On the civil side, you can file lawsuits for fraud, conversion of property, and unjust enrichment against both Amanda and Lisa Reynolds. The real estate company that employs Lisa would likely be included, as they have a duty to supervise their agents. And criminally, Jake prompted. Based on what you've shown me. Richard continued. There are several serious criminal violations. Forgery of your signature, fraud in the execution of documents, fraudulent use of a power of attorney, and grand theft given the value of the forgery of attorney. Property. The notary could also face charges for improperly notarizing documents. How strong is the case, I asked. Very strong, Richard replied without hesitation. The forged signature alone is compelling evidence. Add the misused power of attorney, the below-market sale price, the large commission to Lisa, the personal relationship between Amanda and Lisa, and the rapid spending of proceeds. It paints a clear picture of premeditated fraud. My stomach tightened at the implications. So Amanda could go to jail. Richard met my eyes directly. Yes, fraud and forgery involving property of this value could result in a 5 to 10-year sentence in Massachusetts. Despite everything Amanda had done, the thought of my sister in prison made me pause. We had shared a childhood holidays, family secrets. She had held my hand at our parents' funeral. Could I really be responsible for sending her to jail? Jake seemed to read my thoughts. Casey, remember what your grandfather said when he left you that house. He trusted you to preserve it for the family, to honor the generations that came before you. I nodded, remembering my grandfather's exact words in the video while recording, to my grandson Casey. I leave the family home, knowing he alone will respect its history and ensure it remains a gathering place for future generations of our PC family. Amanda knew how important this was to you and to your grandparents, Jake continued. She didn't just steal a house, she stole your heritage, your memories, and your grandparents' final wishes. Richard cleared his throat. There's also the matter of the buyers, Tom and Sarah. If we proceed with unwinding this transaction, they'll be significantly impacted. They'd get their money back, but they've already invested in renovations and would need to find a new home. I've been thinking about that, I said. If we can recover enough money from Amanda and Lisa, I'd like to compensate Tom and Sarah for their renovations and moving costs. They shouldn't suffer because of my sister's actions. That's generous, Richard noted. But first we need to secure whatever assets remain. Based on the bank records, Amanda has already spent or transferred nearly half the proceeds. What's our next step, I asked. I recommend a two-pronged approach, Richard explained. We file civil complaints immediately to freeze Amanda's and Lisa's assets before more money disappears. Simultaneously, we prepare documentation for the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. Will the DA take this case seriously? Jake asked. It's a family matter. Family fraud is unfortunately common, but the scale of this case, over $500,000, will get attention, Richard assured us. Plus, the professional involvement of a licensed real estate agent adds another dimension. Over the next 2 days, we compiled a comprehensive case file. I met with a handwriting expert who confirmed the signatures on the sale documents were forgeries close enough to fool a casual observer, but missing subtle characteristics of my authentic signature. We also discovered through bank records that Amanda had made multiple large cash withdrawals immediately after the house sale, closed, a classic sign of trying to hide money. Most disturbingly, Jake uncovered evidence of Amanda's gambling addiction that was far worse than I had imagined. Credit card statements showed she had lost over $300,000 at casinos in the past 18 months. There were payday loans, cash advances, and what appeared to be loans from questionable sources, possibly loan sharks. This explains the urgency in selling your house below market value, Jake said. She needed cash fast, and Lisa helped make it happen quickly for a larger cut. As our case solidified, Richard suggested one final step before proceeding with legal action. You should give Amanda a chance to make this right, he advised. Legally, it strengthens our position if we can show you attempted to resolve this directly before involving the courts. Do you really think she'll return the money and help unwind the sale? I asked skeptically. No, Richard said bluntly. But when a judge or jury hears that you gave her the opportunity to correct her actions and she refused, it removes any possibility of sympathy for her position. I agreed to the approach and called Amanda. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message. Amanda, we need to talk about the house situation. There's a way to fix this without things getting worse. Please meet me tomorrow at Cafe Nero on Washington Street at 10 a.m. This is your opportunity to make things right. That night in my hotel room, I stared at old family photos on my phone. There was Amanda at my high school graduation beaming with pride. Amanda and me building a snowman during the blizzard of 2005. Amanda comforting me after my first deployment, when the nightmares kept me awake. What had happened to that person? Had money and addiction completely consumed the sister who once protected me from the world, and was I prepared for the consequences of the legal avalanche I was about to trigger? Cafe Nero was busy with the morning rush when I arrived 15 minutes early for the meeting. Jake came with me carrying a briefcase containing copies of all our evidence. We chose a table in the back corner, positioned so we could see the entrance. Are you ready for this? Jake asked as we waited, stirring his coffee. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, though my stomach was in knots. At 10 sharp, Amanda walked in, accompanied by both Michael and Lisa Reynolds. Amanda looked immaculate, as always, designer sunglasses perched on her head, but I noticed the tension in her posture. Michael appeared haggard with dark circles under his eyes. Lisa kept glancing around nervously, as if expecting to be ambushed. I see you brought reinforcements, Amanda said, as they approached our table, her tone attempting confidence but falling short. Just my attorney, I replied evenly. I'm surprised you brought Lisa. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Amanda thought it would be good if we all talked this through together. We ordered coffees, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the table until the server departed. So Amanda began folding her hands on the table. You wanted to talk about the house. I understand you're upset, but what's done is done. The new owners seem very nice. I studied my sister's face, searching for any trace of remorse or recognition of the magnitude of her betrayal. Finding none, I opened a folder Jake had prepared. Let's be clear about what happened, Amanda. You forged my signature on multiple legal documents. You misused an expired power of attorney. You sold my house for $250,000 below market value to expedite the sale. You conspired with Lisa to create a fraudulent transaction, and you kept all the proceeds for yourself. That's not, Lisa began, but Amanda silenced her with a sharp glance. You abandoned the house, Amanda countered. You went off to play hero in Africa without any consideration for what was happening back home. I made thorough arrangements for the house, I replied. Security systems, bill payments, maintenance, everything was handled. You knew that. The power of attorney was valid, Amanda insisted. You signed it. For a specific banking issue 5 years ago, I said. Not for selling real estate, and certainly not after it was revoked. Michael spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. Amanda, maybe we should just... Not now, Amanda snapped before turning back to me. What exactly do you want, Casey? The house is sold. The money has been invested. There's no way to undo this. I laid 3 documents on the table. These are bank statements showing you've spent over $200,000 at casinos in the past 4 months alone. That's not investing the money, Amanda. That's burning through it to feed your gambling addiction. Lisa's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't known about this aspect of the situation. My financial decisions are none of your business, Amanda said coldly. They became my business when you stole from me, I replied. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every penny of the remaining proceeds from the house sale. You're going to cooperate with unwinding the transaction so Tom and Sarah get their money back and I recover my property. And you're going to enter treatment for your gambling addiction. Amanda laughed, the sound brittle and forced. Or what, you'll sue me, I'm your sister. Actually, Jake interjected, sliding a document across the table. We've already prepared both civil complaints and documentation for the district attorney. Forgery, fraud, and grand theft involving property valued over $250,000 carries a potential sentence of 5 to 10 years in Massachusetts State Prison. The color drained from Amanda's face. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. "I don't want to," I said honestly. "But you've left me no choice. This is your one opportunity to make things right without criminal charges." Lisa abruptly stood. "I need to speak with my attorney. I didn't know about any forgery. Amanda told me you had approved everything." "Sit down," Amanda hissed, grabbing Lisa's wrist. "He's bluffing. Casey doesn't have the stomach to send his own sister to jail." I met Amanda's eyes steadily. "You don't know me anymore, Amanda. The brother who would protect you at all costs disappeared when you betrayed our grandparents' memory and stole my inheritance." "Amanda Michael," said his voice stronger. "Now, how much have you really lost gambling? You told me it was just a few $1,000s. The facade began to crack. Amanda's perfect makeup couldn't hide the fear now evident in her eyes. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she said, her voice rising. "The debts, the people threatening me, I needed that money." "So you stole from me?" I asked. "Your own brother?" "The house wasn't just property, Amanda. It was our family's history. It was all I had left of our grandparents." "Oh, spare me the sentimental garbage," Amanda snapped, her momentary vulnerability replaced by anger. "Grandma and Grandpa are dead. It's just a house." Michael looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Amanda, what have you done?" "What I had to do," she shouted, causing nearby patrons to turn and stare. "Nobody else was going to help me. Not you with your pathetic accountant's salary. Not my useless parents who left us with nothing but emotional baggage, and certainly not my holier-than-thou brother who'd rather save strangers in Africa than help his own sister." Jake slid another document forward. "This is a settlement agreement. You return the remaining funds, approximately $350,000 based on our calculations. You sign an affidavit admitting the fraud to help void the sale, and you agree to enter a treatment program for gambling addiction." "And if I refuse?" Amanda challenged. "Then by this time tomorrow the civil complaints will be filed, your assets will be frozen, and the criminal referral will be on the district attorney's desk," Jake said, matter-of-factly. Amanda looked at Lisa, who was now visibly trembling. "Don't worry, he can't prove anything. It's his word against ours." I slid forward the handwriting expert's report, the notary's statement, and the banking records showing the money trail. "It's all here, Amanda. Every piece of evidence needed to convict both of you." Lisa stood again, this time more decisively. "I'm not going to prison for this. Amanda, you told me Casey had agreed to the sale but couldn't sign in person because he was in Africa. You never mentioned forgery." "You knew exactly what was happening," Amanda snarled. "Why else would you take a $50,000 commission on a $600,000 sale?" "I can't do this," Lisa said, grabbing her purse. "I have children. I have a career." She looked at me. "I'll cooperate. I'll testify. Just please leave my name off the criminal complaint if I help make this right." As Lisa hurried from the cafe, Amanda's composure completely collapsed. "You bitch," she screamed after her. "You'll regret this." Michael placed a restraining hand on Amanda's arm. "Amanda, stop. It's over." He turned to me. "Casey, I had no idea about any of this. I knew she had gambling problems, but not the extent, and certainly not about selling your house. $300,000 doesn't just disappear without a spouse," noticing Jake pointed out skeptically. "We've had separate finances for years," Michael explained. "Amanda handles all the bills, all the accounts. I get an allowance from my own salary." He looked down ashamed. It sounds pathetic saying it out loud. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Amanda suddenly stood, knocking over her coffee. "I won't sign anything. I won't admit anything. And I certainly won't go to some treatment program like a common addict. This is my life, and I did what I had to do." Amanda Michael began. "Shut up, Michael. And you," she pointed a trembling finger at me, "you think you're so perfect. The decorated veteran, the humanitarian, the favorite grandchild. You make me sick. I'd rather go to jail than give you the satisfaction of saving me." With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving Michael sitting there looking shell-shocked. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "I should have seen the signs. I should have stopped her." "Yes, you should have," I agreed without sympathy. "But it's not too late to do the right thing now. Will you help us recover the remaining funds and unwind this mess?" Michael nodded slowly. "I'll do what I can, but Amanda controls everything. I don't even know all the accounts." After Michael left to search for Amanda, Jake looked at me grimly. "That could have gone better." "Or worse," I replied. "At least we have Lisa willing to cooperate and potentially Michael." "So we're moving forward with the legal proceedings," Jake confirmed. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of resolve and sadness. All of them, civil and criminal. Amanda's made her choice. The next 48 hours moved at breakneck speed. Jake filed emergency civil motions to freeze Amanda's known accounts, while Richard submitted our evidence to the district attorney's office. The DA, impressed by the thorough documentation and the value of the property involved, moved quickly. I was sitting in Jake's office reviewing paperwork when my phone began vibrating continuously. First one text notification, then another, then calls, all from Amanda. Over 35 missed calls in just 30 minutes. I let them go to voicemail, focusing instead on the task at hand. "Your sister seems desperate to reach you," Jake observed as my phone buzzed again. "She had her chance to make this right," I replied, silencing the device. Just before noon, Richard called with news. "The police have arrested Amanda Williams and Lisa Reynolds on multiple fraud charges. They're being processed now, and will have arraignment tomorrow morning." I felt a strange hollowness at the news. This was what we wanted, what Amanda deserved, but the reality of my sister being arrested, fingerprinted, photographed, placed in a cell, hit harder than expected. "What about Michael?" I asked. "They're treating him as a witness for now, not a co-conspirator," Richard explained. "His cooperation has been helpful. He's provided access to additional financial records showing Amanda had gambling debts exceeding $400,000. The scope of Amanda's addiction was staggering. She had essentially sold my house to pay off loan sharks and casinos, then immediately started gambling away the proceeds. That evening, alone in my hotel room, I finally listened to Amanda's voicemails. The progression was telling. First message: angry. "How dare you go to the police? I'm your sister, for God's sake." Fifth message: threatening. "I'll tell them you knew all about it. I'll say you approved everything." 12th message, panicking. "Casey, they're here. There are police at my door. Please call them off." 20th message, her voice trembling. "Please, they caught me. Michael won't help. My attorney says I could go to prison for years. You can't let that happen. Call me back." Final message, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please help me. I have no one else." I sat in the dark, her pleas echoing in my ears. Part of me wanted to call back to offer comfort despite everything she'd done. But another part, the part that remembered her slapping me, shoving me, calling me a loser, and dismissing our grandparents' memory, remained resolute. When my phone rang again and Amanda's name appeared on the screen, I answered. "Casey, thank God. You have to help me. This is all a misunderstanding." "Too late, loser," I interrupted, using her own cruel words against her before ending the call. It was harsh, perhaps even cruel, but in that moment it felt like justice. The next few days unfolded like scenes from a crime drama. Amanda and Lisa were arraigned on multiple felony charges. Lisa, facing the prospect of losing her real estate license and possibly her freedom, quickly agreed to a plea deal in exchange for testimony against Amanda. Michael filed for divorce, after discovering the full extent of Amanda's deception, not just the house fraud, but hidden gambling debts, totaling over $400,000, loans from dangerous people, and even a second mortgage on their apartment that he hadn't known about. Local media picked up the story: real estate agent and client's sister arrested in elaborate property fraud. My phone began ringing with calls from childhood friends, distant relatives, and even my former commanding officer, all expressing shock and offering support. I met again with Tom and Sarah, the innocent buyers caught in this nightmare. I explained that the legal process would likely void their purchase due to the fraudulent nature of the sale, but assured them I was committed to making them whole. "We've fallen in love with this neighborhood," Sarah admitted, "but we understand it's your family home." "The legal proceedings will take time," I explained. "You won't need to move immediately, and I promise you'll receive full compensation for the purchase price and all improvements you've made." Tom looked relieved. "We appreciate your understanding. Most people would just see us as obstacles to getting their property back." "You're victims in this too," I reminded them. As the case progressed, I struggled with conflicting emotions. Satisfaction that justice was being served warred with grief over the complete destruction of my relationship with my sister. Walking past the family photos still displayed in Tom and Sarah's our living room, I wondered how Amanda and I had ended up here, from building snowmen together to criminal proceedings against each other. The district attorney offered Amanda a plea deal, 3 years in prison, instead of the potential 10 she faced if convicted at trial. Her attorney urged her to accept, but Amanda initially refused, maintaining she had done nothing wrong. Reality finally set in when her bail was revoked after evidence emerged that she had been planning to flee the country. Sitting in county jail awaiting trial, Amanda finally accepted the plea deal, agreeing to serve 2 years in state prison followed by 5 years of probation. She would also be required to complete gambling addiction treatment and make full restitution. The civil case proceeded simultaneously, resulting in a judgment voiding the property transfer due to fraud. The court ordered the return of funds to Tom and Sarah, who would receive their full $600,000, plus an additional $50,000 for improvements and moving expenses. This money would come from the recovered funds' leases errors and omissions insurance, and the real estate company's settlement. 6 weeks after my return from Africa, I received a call from the county sheriff's office. Amanda wanted to see me before being transferred to state prison to begin her sentence. I drove to the county jail, passing through security and being led to a visiting room separated by glass partitions. When Amanda appeared on the other side, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Her hair hung limp, and the orange jumpsuit highlighted how much weight she had lost. She picked up the phone on her side, and I did the same. "You came," she said, her voice small. "Yes. I didn't think you would." I almost didn't. We sat in silence for a moment, two siblings with shared blood and shared history, now separated by glass and betrayal. "I really am sorry, Casey," she finally said, tears forming. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know. The gambling, it took over everything. I couldn't see clearly anymore." "You sold our grandparents' house," I said, my voice tight. "You knew what it meant to me." "I know. I told myself you didn't really care about it, that you'd abandoned it by going to Africa. I told myself anything to justify what I wanted to do." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The worst part is, I lost most of the money gambling within weeks. All of this for nothing." I didn't know what to say. What could possibly address the magnitude of her actions and the devastation left in their wake? "Michael filed for divorce," she continued. "Mom and Dad's friends won't speak to me. My career is over. I've lost everything. You did this to yourself, Amanda." "I know." She pressed her hand against the glass. "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at my sister, truly looked at her, and saw both the woman who had betrayed me and the girl who had once been my protector. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe someday, but not today." I stood to leave, and she called after me. "Casey, the house, will you keep it now?" I turned back. "Yes, it's where I belong." As I walked out of the jail, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and emptiness. Amanda would serve her time. I would get my house back. Justice had been served. Yet the price had been the complete destruction of our family, what little remained of it after our parents' passing. There was no true victory here, only the grim satisfaction of having stood up for myself against someone who should never have become my adversary in the first place. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, I stood in the front yard of my grandparents' house, my house once again watching as Tom and Sarah loaded the last of their belongings into a moving van. The legal process had taken time, but ultimately the courts had voided the fraudulent sale, restored my ownership, and ensured Tom and Sarah received full compensation. "We found a great place in Jamaica Plain," Sarah told me, as she handed over the keys. "It's actually closer to Tom's work." "I'm glad things worked out," I said sincerely, "and I'm sorry you were caught in the middle of this mess." Tom shook my hand. No hard feelings. Honestly, after everything we learned about how this place came to be sold, we wouldn't have felt right staying. After they drove away, I stood alone on the porch, key in hand, facing the red door they had painted. My first task would be repainting it navy blue, just as my grandfather had always kept it. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was different now, modern updates, new paint, different furniture. The vintage wallpaper in the entryway was gone. The original hardwood floors had been covered with contemporary floating laminate, and the classic crown molding had been removed for a sleeker look. It was like seeing an old friend who had undergone radical plastic surgery, recognizable but fundamentally altered. Over the next few weeks, I began the process of reclaiming the space, not by erasing all the changes, but by bringing back elements that honored my grandparents. I rehung family photographs in the hallway. I restored my grandfather's study, which had been converted to a nursery, placing his desk in the exact spot where it had stood for decades. I planted a new oak sapling where the original tree had been cut down. It would take 50 years to reach the same size, but the symbolism mattered. The neighbors welcomed me back warmly, sharing stories about my grandparents I had never heard before. Mrs. Abernathy from next door brought over her famous apple pie, just as she had done whenever I visited as a child. "Your grandmother gave me this recipe," she said, placing the pie on my kitchen counter. "She'd be happy to know you're back where you belong." Amanda, meanwhile, was serving her sentence at the State Women's Correctional Facility. I hadn't visited again after that first time, but we occasionally exchanged letters. Her early notes were still tinged with self-pity, but gradually shifted toward genuine remorse as she worked through her treatment program. "The counselor says I used gambling to escape feelings of inadequacy," she wrote in one letter. "I always felt I was living in the shadow of our parents' expectations and then later in your shadow. The gambling gave me a thrill, a sense of potential that I could win big and finally be enough. But it was a trap." I read her letters but responded only occasionally. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound for anything resembling normal communication. Surprisingly, Michael reached out about 3 months after Amanda began her sentence. We met for coffee at a neutral location. "I want you to know I had no idea what Amanda was planning," he said, looking considerably healthier than the last time I'd seen him. "I suspected she had a gambling problem, but I never imagined the extent of it or that she would commit fraud." "You lived with her," I pointed out. "How could you not know?" Michael looked down at his coffee. "Amanda controlled all our finances for years. I was working 60-hour weeks and was glad not to deal with bills and budgets. She kept me in the dark deliberately, and I allowed it because it was easier." He sighed. "I should have asked questions when she suddenly had money for a new car and expensive vacations. I failed you, and for that I'm truly sorry." His apology seemed sincere, and over time we developed an unexpected friendship. Michael had information about Amanda's gambling history that helped me understand, if not forgive, what had driven her to such desperate actions. Following Jake's advice, I decided to create a legally binding trust to protect the house for future generations. The irrevocable trust established clear guidelines. The property would remain in the family, could never be sold without unanimous agreement from all trustees, and would serve as a gathering place for family events. This ensures that what happened with Amanda can never happen again. Jake explained as we finalized the paperwork. "Even if you were to grant power of attorney in the future, the house would be protected." As part of my own healing process, I began volunteering with a gambling addiction recovery program, sharing my family's story as a cautionary tale about how addiction destroys not just the addict but everyone around them. The experience helped me process my anger and channel it toward something constructive. I also started therapy, working through the complex emotions of being betrayed by my own sister. My therapist helped me recognize that while Amanda's actions were inexcusable, her addiction was a disease that had warped her thinking and moral compass. "Forgiveness doesn't mean what she did was okay," my therapist explained. "It means freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment." Easy to say, much harder to practice, but I was trying. On the 1-year anniversary of my return from Africa, I hosted a small gathering at the house, the first since reclaiming it. Jake and his now wife came along with a few military buddies, neighbors, and surprisingly Michael. We barbecued in the backyard near the newly planted oak sapling that was already showing promising growth. As the evening wound down and only Jake remained helping me clean up, I found myself standing in my grandfather's restored study, looking at his photograph on the desk. "What do you think he would say about all this?" Jake asked, joining me with a glass of whiskey in hand. "He'd be heartbroken about Amanda," I said honestly. "But I think he'd be proud that I fought to honor his wishes for the house." "And what about you? Are you at peace with how things turned out?" I considered the question carefully. Not entirely. I got the house back but lost my sister in the process. It's a hollow victory in many ways. "She made her choices," Jake reminded me. "You didn't force her to commit fraud." "I know, but family is complicated. I keep wondering if there were signs I missed, if I could have helped her before it got this far." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, contemplating the complicated nature of family bonds, how they can be simultaneously the strongest and most vulnerable connections we have. My grandfather used to say, "Character is revealed, not created by difficult circumstances," I told Jake. This whole experience showed me who Amanda really was, but it also showed me who I am. I won't let her actions change me or make me bitter. That would be giving her power she doesn't deserve. In the months that followed, I continued restoring the house while adding my own touches. I converted one room into a community space where I hosted weekly meetings for a veterans support group. The backyard became the site of neighborhood gatherings, just as it had been in my grandparents' day. Amanda would be eligible for release in another 6 months, with strict probation requirements, including ongoing treatment and restitution payments. I didn't know if we would ever rebuild any semblance of a sibling relationship, but I had decided I would at least give her the opportunity to demonstrate true change, if not for her sake, then for the memory of our grandparents who had raised us to value family above all else. The house stood as it had for nearly a century, weathering storms both literal and metaphorical. Its walls had witnessed joy and tragedy, beginnings and endings. Now it witnessed healing, not the perfect movie ending type, but the messy, complicated, real-world kind that comes day by day, choice by choice. As I sat on the porch swing my grandfather had built, watching the sun set over the neighborhood we had both loved, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The home was where I belonged, where I could honor the past while building a future. Amanda's betrayal had nearly cost me this legacy, but in fighting to reclaim it, I had discovered my own strength and resilience. The house was more than wood and nails, more than property or investment. It was a physical manifestation of family history, of roots that ran deeper than any temporary storm could uproot. And despite everything that had happened, I was grateful to be its guardian for the next generation. Have you ever had to stand up against a family member who betrayed your trust? The hardest battles are often with the people we thought would never hurt us. If my story resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength in difficult situations. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more loyal than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to always stand up for what's rightfully yours.